Street Fighter Alpha 3. Here comes a new challenger. That's enough! Unbeatable!
This is the Alpha Lift Street Fighter Alpha 3 podcast with your hosts, Quest and Lukefitz.
It's showtime!
Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the Alpha Lift podcast. My name is Luke and I'm joined as always by Quest. And today we have the pleasure of talking to Brian Costelloe, founder of the YouTube channel Spacies. Brian has a long and storied history in gaming, including working for the Sega hotline in Australia in the early 90s and writing for Megazone and Hyper magazines. So without further ado, over to you, Quest, to kick off the show.
Thanks, Luke. Welcome to the show, Brian. How are you?
Thank you very much. Interesting pronunciation on Sega.
We'll get into that. The Sega.
Oh, the very
It's a bit controversial.
controversy, and the interview has just started.
No, but thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. You were scheduled to come on yesterday, but you had a plumbing incident. What happened there?
Basically the toilet decided it wanted to be a fountain. So, and I had to get that seen too. But it's all up and running now, and it's our fault because we knew it was kind of coming and we just didn't tend to it. But now we're actually thinking of selling this place, so we're trying to take care of things like that. And
fair enough.
it decided it wanted to get the attention it needed sooner rather than later.
Better out than in.
Yeah.
Better in than out. In this case. Yeah.
All right. For those who haven't seen your content, how did you get a job working for Sega? And what were the most common questions you got on the hotline?
I used to write my own video game magazine, so I used to consume a lot of not just console-related magazines, but also Commodore 64 magazines. Even though I never owned a Commodore 64, I was just interested in the way they covered video game reviews, even on a system, like I said, that I didn't own. It was just always interesting to see what other games were coming out on different consoles at the time. I was mostly Sega focused at that time myself, and so the name of my magazine was the Sega Times, and I used to actually send copies of that into Sega at the time.
Do any still exist? Are they out there somewhere? The Sega Times?
They died. I can't find. I've got a couple copies left, and that's it. But yeah, I used to have a whole box full of copies, and for whatever reason, they just disappeared.
Yeah.
I've had a few things just disappear. It's usually when you move house.
It's funny how that happens.
You get all your stuff set up, and you're like, where did I put? Oh my god, it's gone. Yeah. So
it would have been pre-internet, right? Are we talking like Master System days or early Genesis days?
I would have been focusing on the arrival of a brand new monster of a console that was going to be coming out called the Mega Drive. The Genesis name wasn't even known at that stage.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what was the focus of those early articles that you're writing? Like mainly reviewing games that were coming out, or what kind of content were you doing?
I didn't really have a political twist to any of the stuff I was posting, or it was just here's a game, it's coming out, is it good, is it not good, what news, what rumors are coming of new consoles coming out. It was all basically just anything Sega related at the time, and Sega was such a big deal at that time here in Australia that you could actually do a whole magazine based on nothing but Sega content, and you could not run out of material. It was pretty big time for Sega at that moment.
So how do you go from sending in your magazines to getting a job there? How did that transition kind of happen?
So it turns out that the issues that I was sending in were kind of getting looked at, but not really. But the higher ups, the marketing manager in particular, he took a bit of a notice to it, but he wasn't manager of the hotline at the time, so he didn't really act on it. But him and me used to have quite long phone calls, just me fishing for information of what's coming out, etc., etc.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
They had a change of the guard. A new manager took over the hotline, and one of her first instructions was to clean out some of the old staff members that were there and put some new guys in with more of an emphasis on being Sega focused. And the question that I got asked was, You can read and you can write, obviously, but have you played Alex Kidd in Miracle World? And I said, yeah, I've actually beaten it, which was true at the time. I played a friend's cartridge version, and we sussed out how to beat it, and that was enough to get me the job.
Wow. Okay, that's the qualification you need back then.
Yeah, and I can still recite the end code to this day.
Oh wow. Okay, but you have to be a Sega member for you to tell us.
Yeah, that kind of sort of kicked in midway through my time there. When I first started, it was just a phone call, and anyone could get hints and tips. But then they started to try and work out ways to get more people on the database so that they can have more names and addresses for marketing purposes. And one of their they knew they had a carrot in that people were ringing up for cheats. So in order to get the cheats, you had to be a member, and that was sort of what was their reasoning back then.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. What were your other responsibilities at the hotline?
We used to get EPROMs, which are ROM boards, which were beta versions of games. Some of them were incomplete. Some of them were near to completion. Some of the games just never got released. And we would be told, we want you to look at this game and tell us, is this something that would be marketable in Australia? Would this sell? That was one little task. We used to get games to review for Megazone magazine, which was the in-house published magazine here, and it was quite popular in Australia at the time. And we would also sometimes get asked to go to roadshows. So we would go to shopping centres and man a counter full of TVs and Mega Drives and Master Systems and just push Sega over and over again. Yeah.
Yep. What kind of things were you looking for when you were reviewing like games that were soon to be released, for whether they were suitable for Australia? Like what separated, say, the North American or Japanese market from Australia?
I guess instant appeal to parents was the number one thing, because it was a very family orientated era, obviously not like now. Yeah, you
didn't have your like Naughty Dog type releases and stuff back then.
It just wasn't. I mean, Night Trap, which is another topic in itself, was sort of what started all that, and I was there for when that kicked off. And but prior to all that, it wasn't looked at as is it too violent or is it not violent? Because most games were just not really overly graphical enough to be interpreted as violent.
Maybe Mortal Kombat or something, be it early.
Well, that again came towards the end of my time there at Sega.
Yep.
But it was mostly to see if it was something that was marketable, quick and easy to pick up and play. And did it have a? I mean, there was games that were really bad. It got pushed really heavily, and that was one of them was The Simpsons, Bart versus the Space Mutants.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah.
And I absolutely despised that game. But it was marketed heavily because of the Simpsons name. So that kind of marketing appeal. That appealed to the people upstairs, and it didn't really appeal to me so much as a gamer.
Yeah. Did you play anything early that you were amazed by, or like something that ended up going on to become like a classic game?
Easily Streets of Rage 2.
Wow.
I got to play. It was on the EEPROM board. I got to take it home, which was amazing. And
how do you play that if it's on some kind of like special board? Do you play your console? Or?
Yeah, so the cartridges themselves were just like obviously the standard cartridges that you and I got to play, but every now and again you get the games sent in from Japan in clear plastic tubes, and we had to actually insert the chips in a certain order to make sure that they were going to work. And the EEPROM board was a circuit board. It was easily 3 or 4 times the size of a normal cartridge.
Yeah,
and it would stick out of the cartridge slot. And that the first time I got to see one of them was when I got invited in as a 17-year-old to play a beta version. I think it was beta. I'm not sure, 100% sure, but it was an early release version of Sonic the Hedgehog. And I got to see that before my time starting there. So, but getting to take one of those home to play a game that I knew was going to be big
Yeah.
Because the minute I played it, the first level track that you get to hear, because I was already by that stage a Streets of Rage fan, but and I knew that it was going to be a massive game because EGM magazine was saying it's going to be the biggest Mega Drive title memory size to be ever released.
Yeah.
But to see that first level in its it was fairly well completed by that stage. It's just that we didn't get to see the rest of the game. And I just knew straight away how big that title was going to be.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I notice you often mention in your reviews like the soundtracks of games. Like what is that an important part of the game for you, or like what's your relationship to soundtracks?
Just the emotional attachment to a game. Like if a soundtrack's good, it can get the energy right in the game, especially like with Streets of Rage. You got the jazz, you got the house music and techno, and it makes you want to smash crap up.
Yeah, definitely.
Did
you play the new? There was a new Streets of Rage game very recently, right? What do you think of that?
I still haven't played it.
Okay, saving yourself.
I want to get it on a physical version, and that's I guess another big topic at the moment: physical versus digital. I mean, with the way digital's going, I wouldn't be able to have a collection of games like I've got behind me now. It's just going to be interesting to see what game collections are going to be like, or even if they're going to be a thing moving forward. But that's the reason why I haven't played it. It's because I don't want to spend $30 odd on something that I'm not going to be able to hold, something tangible.
Yeah.
Yep. What motivated you to start a YouTube channel up?
I missed the industry. I left the industry it would have been about 95, and for one reason or another, I just couldn't get back into the industry, and I just missed being a part of it. And at that time, I thought I was a big part of all the different aspects of video gaming at that stage. And from 95 all the way up until 2016, I felt like I was on the outside looking in again. And I hated it, and I wanted to find some way of being able to be an active voice in the gaming community once more. And YouTube was something that I looked at for a long time, but just didn't have the technical means to get into until at that point.
Yep. So the Sin Spacies show, or what was it called previously? It had a previous name. Yeah.
It used to be called Yes, Another Bloody Gaming Podcast.
Yeah, that one. Was that when you started the channel? Did you have that in mind, like straight away? Like, this is what I want to do.
No, I kind of, my first focus was just to first get videos up and running and see how I can get my head around editing and audio levels and all that sort of nonsense. And just, I had no formal training. I've never stood in front of a camera before doing any of this. But
I like your 2-camera setup. I notice you have like a AV camera and you're like throw the one, throw the other. It's interesting.
To get that to work, it felt like I discovered gold or something. It was just so hard to learn the editing aspect of how to get that to happen. Was a bit tricky, but now I can do it no problem. It's just it comes easy to me. But for someone that had never touched editing software before in their life, I felt like I felt like an achievement unlocked when I managed to do that for the first time. And everyone comments on that. It's just like, it is double the work, but I think having that 2-camera aspect to my videos, it just helps eliminate the style approach that you see on some channels. Not to bag out channels that do only have the 1 camera. With YouTube, you need everything you can get to try and stand out from other channels.
Yeah, for sure.
So you had Top Hat Gaming Man on your channel. How did you get in contact with him, and what was it like having him on?
So I knew he was in Australia, and I was following his channel by that stage when he was. Oh, sorry, that was right in the eardrum. So I knew he was in Australia, so I was thinking of ways of being able to approach him, but I'm kind of shy in approaching bigger channels, and he was only 5,000 subscribers at that stage, but to me that seemed out of my league, which in hindsight is crazy. But
what were you at the time?
I hadn't even had 50 at that stage. I was so tiny. And someone that follows me on Twitter, who's no longer on the platform, was a major fan of both of our channels, and he reached out to Top Hat Gaming Man and told him about me, and he was insisting that I contact Top Hat Gaming Man. So I thought, what the heck, I'll try it. So I sent Top Hat Gaming Man a message to say, you do realize you're only a couple of postcodes away from where I am right now, and I am open to doing a video with you if you're interested. And I had to sell why that would be something that he would want to do, and that was all I had to mention was I used to work for Sega, and that got his attention. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
But to answer another question, what was he like to work with?
Yep.
He's incredibly shy in person. He's not like the persona you see in front of the camera. He's
really?
Very, very different when you meet him face to face, and a quite nice guy to chat with. And he understood that I was very inexperienced with YouTube at that stage. He had his brother with him who was a professional cameraman, and I was a bit difficult to work with because I wanted background music, and then it was because I didn't know how to edit that stuff in at that stage.
So you would just play the music live in the background and have it
in the background, which in hindsight is like I would never do that now, but that's how I used to. So before doing YouTube, there used to be GameSpot.com that used to allow you to upload videos back in 2006 or it was 2006, which is quite a while back now. That's like when that's when YouTube started, right?
Yeah, right around there. Yeah, the early days of web video, like 240p, all this kind of stuff.
So I had a camera that could record to SD card at that stage, which was quite a big deal back then. So I did 2 videos, and I wish I could get them now because I can't find them. But I had his Johnny running in the background as just background noise.
Okay.
So as a YouTuber, have you had any problems with YouTube, whether it's the ads or any technical issues?
My AdSense account is 100% broken. Since 2016 to now, I've made 0 on the platform.
Yeah.
Jeez. You have Twitch though.
But I use Twitch, and I've had some success on there. I'm just starting out on the platform though.
Yep.
I've been on there for 2 years, but I've only really been taking it kind of.
How does it compare to YouTube?
In what regards? Just in general as an experience, or?
In terms of your experience with it, and also the responsiveness of the people that run it and stuff like that.
Well, I find that YouTube's, for example, their support is non-existent. But when it comes to getting any kind of support in the background, Twitch is 1,000 times better. But just as an experience in general, I don't know. I think YouTube enables opportunities that Twitch can't offer you, but the instant satisfaction or gratification is way better on Twitch. So they have plus and minuses that that you have to both consider on one or the other. You can stream on YouTube, and I've done that a couple of times, but I've always seen Twitch as being a more serious platform for streaming. But there's a new, I don't know if you guys heard, but there's a new platform that's possibly going to come up involving Dr. Disrespect.
Really? No, we haven't heard about that. What's that about?
Well, you know how he got banned off Twitch, and everyone was suspecting all the most sinister things that could have gone wrong. Apparently, none of that's true, and it was just that Twitch got wind that he was trying to start up a new Spotify streaming service called Brime or Bream. I don't know how they're going to pronounce it. Brime. And
they're Spotify trying to start up video.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's happening.
Yeah, that's a good scoop. You still got your journalistic kind of flair going on there.
I'm always looking.
Yeah. So speaking of which, do you think there's still, like in game journalism today, is there still space for magazines, or is it all kind of digital only these days?
Nah, digital only. A lot of Hyper magazine.
Yeah.
However, I stopped buying the actual physical magazines a long time back, and that's not because one day I woke up and said, "No, that's it. I'm not going to do it." It's just something that stopped becoming part of my routine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've been on some panels before. What was it like going on PAX?
PAX was super awesome because it wasn't my first panel. We got to do a panel up in the Blue Mountains as a bit of a test run on how that all works out. We got interviewed by Hex from Good Games, from Hex and Bajo fame. But PAX itself was just such a epic, massive event. I think it was 60,000 people over 3 days.
Wow, that's
yeah,
huge.
So and that's pre-corona days. So
yeah.
You can't fathom what it would be like to be in a room that packed now in the current atmosphere, in the current environment. But just being on the stage on such a glamorous, gorgeous stage as it was down there, with a professional audio, AV crew there manning the screen behind us and all of our audio as well. It was a great experience, and I would love to go through and do that again. We've got some plans coming for something involving not just Sega but also Nintendo. I won't go more into it in case it doesn't work out.
Yep.
But we want to plan something again, similar to what we did, but just mix it up a little bit more.
So would it be with the same guys you had on the previous panel, or different people?
If they're agreeing to it. I mean, I'm certainly putting my hand up and wanting to fly back down to Melbourne and do it all again. But it all depends on what the other guys, what's going on in their life at the time.
Yeah, you also went to a HubCon. You're on that panel as well.
Yeah, that's the one with Hex.
Oh, that's the one with Hex. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
That was kind of a test run for me on what it's like to be in a room full of strangers and just talking. The way I was viewing it was, it's just like YouTube, except you can actually see the people instead of it just being a camera. It was, it was actually good. There was no in that Hex interview that we did. There was only one person that got up and left, and that could have been just to go to the toilet or something. So and we were there for about an hour or so. So we've walked away from that thinking that was a bit of a success.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. You mentioned before about working with Nintendo. What was the relationship between Sega and Nintendo at the time in Australia? Like, do you guys have animosity towards them, or like what?
Totally.
What were you guys thinking about them? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I had in my folder an anti-Mario sign made up.
Yeah. Okay.
And I used to prank call them.
The Nintendo hotline or something like that?
Yeah, I used to. I don't know what the other guys did, but I certainly did it. I prank called the Nintendo hotline and just asked them when is Sonic coming out on the Super Nintendo and stuff like that. Yeah. Just to try and get a reaction. And the obvious troll questions. I wasn't trying to pretend to be a genuine caller. Yeah. And they were just so awkward to talk to. Yeah. And they just didn't run along with it. They were just I even had one guy, I think, just hanging up on me. Just
Yeah. So who was on top in the early 90s? Like, I think you said in one of your videos that when Sonic 2 came out, that was basically peak Sega. Like, at that point, did you ever feel Sega was on top?
Well, they were. It wasn't it wasn't a feeling. It was
a fact. Yeah.
Okay. They were more. Sonic was more recognizable than Mickey Mouse at one stage. Yeah. That was when it looked like Sega could be the top dog moving forward. It was all hinging on that moment in time. Just sadly that they decided to make all these odd decisions. I don't blame people blame the Mega CD. I don't blame the Mega CD. It was more 32X era onwards that started to go, what the hell for Sega.
Yep. What was it? Was it the consoles, do you think, or just the first party games weren't quite as good, or what were you? No,
there was too much in-house fighting. Instead of both Sega of America and Sega of Japan coming together to take on the common enemy, which at that time was Nintendo, and they were too busy trying to outdo each other. And I get that in order to come up with the best possible product to take forward, you need that in your company. Mm-hmm. They took it too far. They were hiding secrets from each other, and the Saturn was being developed without the Sega of America's knowledge of the whole thing, and so therefore Sega of America were thinking, right, well, 32X is where we're going from here on. And then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, there's this Saturn thing coming out. And it was like, well, what are we doing, guys?
Yeah.
And they burnt a lot of people. And I read a post on Twitter from someone that was probably around coming into teenagehood at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that my parents bought a 32X, and the amount of cords coming out of the back turned my parents off Sega for good.
Wow.
That's a powerful thing. Just from cords. The cords alone was what turned them off.
Just that little user experience.
It doesn't take much, no.
Yeah. Could you see him getting back in the console game?
Sega getting back in 2020? No.
Yeah.
No.
Never? They're just too far gone?
No, I mean, Atari have proven it. Well, Atari, I don't know what drugs they're on, but
Okay.
I don't know. Like, it would be a novelty more than anything else. I mean, they just showed that they can be successful in releasing a novelty device, where I think the Mega Drive Mini takes on the Super Nintendo Classic in more ways than one. In some cases, it beats it, in my opinion. But then they come out with another announcement with the Game Gear Mini, and it's just like, what are we doing, guys?
Yeah.
Well, we have a question from one of our listeners, Revade. He has his own idea of how to save Sega. He said, would it have helped Sega World if someone was in a Sonic the Hedgehog suit, there to fall and drop a bunch of rings if anyone bumped into them?
I think you could work with that, though. They didn't play on the rings side of things enough, I think. I don't know. Maybe make a human crane event where you've all seen that, where they get a guy who's the crane and put him in a whole bunch of rings, and every ring he gets a prize or something. I don't know.
Well, I haven't seen that. Maybe I should look it up. Did you actually go to Sega World? Because I know it was in Sydney.
Sadly, I only went once. But interestingly enough, it was the pre-run test run. So
really? So the Sega employees went there first or something?
No, I wasn't working for Sega
okay.
at the time. Yeah. So how I got the ticket was a neighbor across the road used to work for Nestle, or as we were calling it back then, Nestle.
Yeah.
That's a true story.
Nestle.
They actually had to come out with a commercial to correct everyone on how the pronunciation should have been.
Yep.
So I had a Nestle staff member offer me their tickets because they were sick. So I fluked on it, and I'm so glad I did, because it wasn't open to the general public. There was no way that I would have been offered that any other way at the time. Yeah. And I actually was bumping into ex-colleagues when going on that test run. People that were in totally different areas of the company had been moved over to a totally different. One guy that used to do all the polystyrene cutouts for all the shop displays, he was then turned into a roller coaster attendant.
Wow. Okay.
Well, interchangeably. What is your most memorable video on the channel?
Oh wow, I'm proud. There's two answers to this. The one I'm proud of the most is my Dreamcast video.
Okay.
That's the one where I felt like I was a real YouTuber.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I really took on trying to do some sort of serious editing with a video, because it's time consuming, and I don't really have a lot of time to spend on these videos, and I get too anxious. I just want to get the video out and work on the next video by the end of it. But the one video that has really drawn the most attention to my channel is the one where I discovered the Sonic statues from the Sega World statues.
What's the story with that, like, for some people listening who haven't seen those videos?
So I'm editing a video, and one it was a Sin Spacey Show episode. I can't remember. It was a podcast, and they take forever to edit sometimes. And while I'm editing, on my other screen, I noticed a message pop up. It was a direct message saying, "We need to save Sonic." That was it. That was the message. I'm like, what drugs are they on?
Yep.
And then they sent me a link. So I clicked the link, and it was an article posted on a Facebook group about how the Sonic World statues have been located after all these years. And the picture that I saw just instantly got my attention. It was just like this decayed really run down looking Sonic statue with a half Sally statue. So the main thing that got my attention was, one, it was a Sega World statue that's still in existence, and two, it's a Sally statue. What the hell? Like, Sega very rarely acknowledged that character in anything.
Well, I'm not even familiar with that character. Where is she from?
So she's from the Archie comics.
Okay, right.
She only makes one appearance in one official Sega game, and that was Sonic Spinball. And it's like a pop in, pop out moment that if you blink, you'd miss it.
Yeah.
So she was kind of loosely canon, but Sega World fully embraced that character. They had mascots walking around dressed as her, and they had a statue out the front. So
yeah, okay.
And I think they wanted something that would appeal to male boy gamers and girl gamers. So gamer girl wasn't really an expression back then.
Sure.
Totally different topic. Moving away from that one. But they wanted to address both demographics, and so they, rather than having Sonic and Tails out the front, they thought it would be better to have try and bump up the character of Sally.
Yep. You went to Xbox Fan Fest. What were your memories of it, and how did you get a controller out of it?
Oh man. So I got wind that they were going to do the Fan Fest, and I was just on that from the word go. I took a sickie to get there, and I lined up. Everything that I went through was on my video, but I lined up thinking that if I go, I was getting updates that there was already like 50 people in the queue, and they were only going to open it up to 200 people. So I was really anxious getting in there, but when I lined up, they didn't fill up the whole 200 people. They didn't get 200 people to go to this thing. And it was over 3 days, so it was a big commitment time-wise from people, but totally worth it, and I would definitely do it again. The first day we got to go out to Eastern Creek after meeting up in the city, so they gave us a bus trip out to Eastern Creek, and the whole day was just spent doing drag racing. Not drag racing, drifting. Drifting.
Okay, I was going to say.
And everyone got to have a turn at the drifting. They were just doing it constantly all day, and you'd have to line up and wait for your turn. But and then we went to the launch of Gears of War 3, I think it was by that time. God, I'm dating myself a bit there. And the Forza, it was for the whole thing was for launching Forza Horizon 3.
Okay.
Yeah, and then on the final day, we just got to see a sneak preview of what the Xbox stand was going to look like at EB Expo. Rest in peace.
It doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. Another real life gaming thing gone the way of magazines.
Yeah, well, they were absorbed by PAX.
Yeah. Okay. So we got to ask this. We're actually a Street Fighter podcast. So I noticed in the back you've got your Street Fighter. Is that a scarf there? Yeah,
yes.
Beautiful.
$3.
$3, yeah. Is it always there, or you got it out just for the podcast?
No, I'd love to say I got it out. No, it's always there. I love Street Fighter 2. So when Street Fighter 2 first came out, I was actually poo-pooing on it, and I thought, I was a Mortal Kombat person at the time.
Yeah.
And everyone was
in the arcade, or this is when it first came to Sega?
Yeah. Arcade. It wasn't even on console by this stage.
Yep.
And everyone kept talking about Street Fighter. And I've always been a person that I can't stand the mainstream. If something's mainstream, I'm always sus on it. Yep. But it was when I got to play it for the first time, and I just saw how in-depth this game was compared to anything else that was out at that point, and how you can have two players have totally different game styles taking on each other and have weaknesses and strengths against each other. It was a magical game, and still holds up. Apart from the slowness of the first initial release, that was a little bit like playing on the moon or something. But
they sped it up since then for sure.
Yeah, hyper fighting, man. You just ramp that up to 10 and hold on.
Yeah, overclock the arcade machine. Yeah.
You've mentioned to me before that Metal Jesus Rocks, you didn't like the way that he treats his fans sometimes? Like, what sort of things have you seen him do?
The one, I mean, he e-begs. I beg, but not like that. I simply let people know that if you like my channel, and the fact that I'm not making any money from doing it, if you want to help, you can, and here's a way to go about it. And it's up to people. I look at it as like a tip jar, but he purposely goes out of his way to mention the fact that he had his basement flooded. So rather than using all the massive money that he was probably making from all the views that he was getting at that time, because his channel was auto-suggested on my YouTube constantly for weeks. It's not now because I've gone off him.
Yeah.
But the one event that, well, the one thing that really got my attention and just thought, wow, that is wrong. He was at some panel, and it was him and a bunch of other big YouTubers like him. And right in the middle of it, rather than wait to the end when, okay, if anyone wants to come up, you can, this person just walks up halfway through it. And then, like, offering a gift at an altar, they dropped the,
Really? Yeah.
it was a big, is it Fat Boy? Is that what they called the big bomb in Fallout 4?
I'm not sure. I haven't played the game, but
There's a massive bomb,
Yeah.
like a limited edition atom bomb,
yeah.
and they give that to him, and
Yeah.
he just turns around and walks back, and there was no sort of, I don't know,
Acknowledgement. Almost.
maybe I just misread it, or maybe I'm looking into it too much, but he didn't. I mean, if someone did that for me, I would have been, I don't care if the other panelists are talking, I would have said, sorry guys, I've just got to interrupt. This is such an awesome thing. Can we all get a round of applause
Yeah.
for
Okay.
him offering this as a gift? That's an awesome, that's a huge stretch for someone to do all that. And he didn't, he just didn't stop. He just sort of put it down in amongst the other stuff that he
Yeah, right.
hadn't.
Is that a size thing? Like once you got 1 million subscribers, you're just getting like
I don't know.
more stuff
I
to
hope
poke a
that,
stick at?
I mean, I'd hope to think that if my channel ever did pick up, that I would never get like that. I would always want to be going out of my way to be grateful and thankful for any sort of attention that my channel could get.
Sure.
But yeah, that's just my comments on Metal Jizz. I mean, I got nothing against the guy, but it was just that I saw that and it did rub the right way with me.
Yeah, fair enough. Going back to when you made the channel, were there any YouTubers, like gamer YouTubers, that you looked at and you said, like, I like what they're doing, I'd like to do something similar to that? Or
I did a video, 10 YouTubers that inspired me. Actually, no, was it 5? 5, that's right. But 2 that really stand out for me is Happy Console Gamer.
Yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a Canadian. He's about my age, but has had a totally different life experience to me. He's really good because of the energy that he brings to his channel, and he was one of the first to do what I'm doing with a game collection behind him and then just talking in front of a camera. And Classic Game Room.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Classic Game Room, where I was back in the day.
Yeah, and it's such a shame that YouTube didn't prop him up to be something bigger than what he was, because he was YouTube for quite a long time for me, and it's just something that YouTube has never really recovered since he's gone off the scene.
Yeah, I remember him covering all his PS2 racing games. That was like one of my favorites to watch.
Well, the first sign that something was up was when one day he comes up and re-releases the Gran Turismo video. And you're thinking, oh, what's going on? And he was complaining that someone had gone through and has removed all his videos or flagged his videos for copyright. That was because those games have music in them.
Yep. That sucks.
So that was the first sign that something was not right between him and YouTube.
Yeah. When the Sega Dreamcast came out, what was your opinion on it? And since then, has your opinion changed? Like your first impressions, I mean to say.
My first impressions of the Dreamcast was, well, when I first heard that they were doing a new console at that stage, I was thinking, God, I hope they get this right, because PlayStation has really kicked their ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, but when I saw it, one of the first games I got to see on it was Sonic Adventures, and I was blown away by how smooth and how crisp that game looked for its time. It really did live up to any kind of expectations anyone could have had on a new Sega console. And I know that the PlayStation 2's technically more powerful than the Dreamcast, but I just think that there's something about the appearance and the way the graphics appear on screen for the Dreamcast games looks so much more better to me personally than the PlayStation 2.
Yep, fair enough. Do you have any questions, Luke? Any more?
Yeah, I got one more question before we wrap up. Like, how do you explain the kind of modern interest in retro games? So I feel like in the last maybe 5 or 10 years, there's been a lot of interest, especially in that late 80s, early 90s, like kind of Nintendo/Sega heyday. Like, where do you think that's coming from?
Oh, I think it's a lot of kids that have grown up since then have become cashed up adults.
Yeah.
They're going back on their childhood and remembering that kid that had the Neo Geo, or remembering the kid that had the Mega CD, and they're now able to scrounge a thing called eBay and actually purchase one. So I think I wouldn't call it midlife crisis. We're still not quite there yet.
Yeah, maybe a quarter life crisis.
Yeah, but it's definitely a case of a lot of enabled gamers from back then are now able to.
That's a good term, enabled gamers.
But you know, and it's I'm so glad that we've got things such as the Mega Drive Classic and the Super Nintendo Mini, or whatever, the vice versa. No, Mega Drive Mini, sorry, and
Mega Drive Mini,
Nintendo Classic.
Yep.
Yeah. I love both of these equally. I know I boast and brag about the Mega Drive one more because of my past, but you are talking to a guy that had a Super Nintendo in the Sega hotline playing Street Fighter 2 while taking kids on Alex Kids, so
yeah, okay.
I fully embrace both.
they let you bring that in there?
It was weird that the CEO was actually walking past one day while I was playing while I was playing Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And I was waiting to get spoken to, and it just didn't happen. It was just so laid back. It wasn't like, I don't know if you guys have seen, there's a Sega hotline video from Sega of America, and that is so much more corporate than what we were. We were just like,
your video is loose. That one that you showed from like Christmas.
There was no managers around at that time.
They were just like lying on the ground, like everyone's making sounds in the background while you're taking the call. Like it's
that was a few days out from Christmas or after. I can't quite remember. But there was no managers. They were all on annual leave.
Yeah. Okay.
So then when the cat's away.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you said in the video. Now, I've actually, I wanted to ask this. I got one question for that video. Right near the start, you say, "Oh, I'm going to cut out this next part," and then there's a sudden cut. What's the lost footage there? There must be some missing footage.
Trying to work out the part you're talking about.
It's right near the start of it's kind of near the start. You say like, "Oh, I'm going to cut out this next section because this is no good. I got to cut this out." And then there's like a sudden cut, and then you keep going.
I think I used the word gay or something in there, and I knew that it was not going to be something that would hold up in this day and age.
Yeah, there you go. The question is answered.
Yeah.
It's different times.
Different times, but I mean, even back then it was an immature thing to say, but we just said it. But if you were to post that now, I think it with this especially like today now with what's coming out on YouTube with this cancel culture going, I think it's going a bit too far. I think there are some things that if you get found out about, like from your past, that you were doing back then that was criminally wrong, then certainly you should be held accountable for it.
Big difference between saying a word and like.
But words alone and just saying something that was inappropriate for today's standards compared to back then, getting chastised about it now in 2020. I've changed as a person since back then. There's no way that 18-year-old would have the same opinions as this 40-something-year-old now that,
Yeah.
okay, I'll say 46. It's a long time ago.
Yeah. And the other thing is the language changes. Like the general language that people use will change over time, and the meanings of it and how it's interpreted will change. So
Yeah.
these days,
Yes and
some
no.
words that are more controversial. Where back then it was
Do
just
you say,
anyone
for
would say
example,
it.
sick? Like, oh my God, that's so sick.
When I was younger. Yeah.
The first time I found out about that was when I was working on the Sega hotline. It was one of the other staff members. I was just confused. Yeah, oh man, that's sick. Like,
That's
what do
sick,
you mean?
bro.
What's wrong with it? Yeah.
Yeah. I just have two more questions. You made a video called Top 10 Best Controllers of All Time, but what is the worst controller you have used?
Oh man, worst controller.
Yeah, worst controller. Was there any maybe third-party controller you had that was just crap?
In television?
Like
Yeah, the Intellivision, I think. I don't know if you're familiar with that
No,
console.
what's that one?
what's that?
It was a competitor to the Atari 2600.
Oh, so old. We're talking old.
Real old school. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this was a really experimental phase of video gaming. And this thing looked more like a telephone than it was a controller. The only saving grace for it, though, which is one cool feature that it had that I would love to see brought back, but it would never happen. They had insert overlays. And so if you put one of those overlays in, it would tell you what the buttons do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that,
I think I've seen that. Angry Video Game Nerd has a video about this.
oh, okay. And there was another, I think it was the Atari Jaguar that also did it as well. But I've got an insert overlay for He-Man. Nothing screams 80s more than an Atari, an Intellivision controller with an He-Man holding up a sword.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
My last question is, what do you give to your Patreon supporters? What sort of things?
I'm still sussing all that out. At the moment, the only thing that I can really give at this stage is while I'm doing streaming, I allow Discord to be opened up to Patreon supporters and also subscribers to my channel. And when I say subscribers, I mean Twitch subscribers, which is a totally different thing to YouTube subs. So that they can come in and chat with me while I'm in the middle of a stream. And when I say chat, I mean actual voice chat.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So, and I've got it set up so that it blocks out or filters out people who are not subbed or are not Patreon supporters. I had to do that because there was a couple of people that were coming in and just saying stuff online that I just didn't want to be on there.
Yeah.
so
Okay.
I had to work out a way to filter it, and that was the best thing I could come up with. But I'm still, I'm struggling to try and figure benefits to give to Patreon supporters because I'm still sussing out my channel. I've just got merchandise set up for the first time recently. So
shirts.
Oh, I got I'm wearing the jacket now, the hoodie, the old logo. Don't change your logos in a hurry, boys and girls, because when you do that, you then got to go through and change all your social medias. You then got to go through and upgrade new merch and
merch.
Yeah.
Then you've got vintage merch.
Yeah.
Oh, I like having that historical first logo now and that's the reason why I won't remove it from the site, because there might be some people out there that go, I like your old logo better, so they'll buy that instead.
The old stuff.
Yeah. Well, you did change your Discord logo. That had a few different opinions on it.
I've had mostly positive. I did get one or two people saying I liked your old logo better, and I understand why they would like it. I actually do like the black and white design, but I just felt that with recent personal events, like, I know this is going to sound so sad and trivial, but my cat passing away, that just got me really worked up. So I had to look at changing a few things, and so the logo was the first thing to go.
Yeah, well, I like the new logo better. But I was a bit confused when I saw it. I was like, I'm not part of this Discord. What's this about? But I clicked it and I'm like, it's in Spacies. But that's what I had to say, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
No, thanks for having me on.